Hi, this is RN Bhaskar from BKBB, an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Batein. We bring you policy analysis, conversations, and even stories once a week. But this is a platform where we talk about news, or rather, news behind the news. And we give this on every weekday at 8:50 in the morning. Today, I have my co-anchors with me, and let me introduce them to you. First of all, I have Katya. Katya, welcome. And then we have Isha. That's Isha. And then we have Anurag, who's also with us. Welcome, Anurag. And we have 4 titles today instead of 3. Let me show you the titles first. And the titles are, the first one is about President Xi Jinping, who starts on his tour of South Asian countries in the wake of Trump's tariffs. And the second story is a very interesting one by Katya on how the rich remain rich. The third one is on UNCTAD and how the UN asked the government to go easy on tariffs for poor countries. And the last one, a very interesting story, is on Mehul Choksi and his arrest in Belgium. We hope all the 4 stories will interest you, and we'll talk about a few things beyond the stories. And before we begin, let me request you, A, click the subscribe button if you have not clicked it already. B, please click the like button. And C, most important, tell all your friends about us. It helps us boost our numbers. And let's begin with the news immediately. The papers were full of news that Xi Jinping had begun his tour of Southeast Asia, starting with Vietnam. What makes Vietnam interesting, and India has yet not learned a lesson from Vietnam, is that you can have enemies at your border. It's had wars with China, but you can still do business with them. It has wars with America. Remember the Vietnam War? And can still do business with them. Anyway, Xi Jinping, watching the way Vietnam was slapped with high tariffs, has started visiting all countries to rope them into the Chinese trade network, even the ASEAN network. And China has become a bigger spokesman for BRICS and ASEAN than India has. And the Xi Jinping will begin with Vietnam, then go to Cambodia, which is an old standing ally of China, and then go to Malaysia, which is a large consumer market. Earlier, if you remember, they've gone to Indonesia. And India continues to woo Western countries which are declining in purchasing power, will have no markets for India, either for exports or even for imports. The real markets in ASEAN, and India seems to have forgotten that. Piyush Goyal is happier sitting in USA, and now he's gone off to Italy. Anyway, that ends my story. Let's take the second very interesting story by Katya. And Katya, can we have you?
So, with great wealth comes great duplicity. So, this is something which we probably all knew. We were all told that actually there is a report which has come up which has made it official. The richer you get, the lesser tax you pay. So, if and the very easy way that they are doing it is by paying by hiding the reported income. In fact, there is a huge discrepancy in terms of taxpayers and how they pay tax. So, bottom 10%. So, when we say bottom 10%, it's the bottom 10% of the taxpayers. They actually tend to over report their income, in terms relative to their wealth. But the top 1% is doing a little less, doing exactly the opposite. It is reporting income which just to 3 to 4% of their wealth. And for the wealthiest 0.1%, as you get wealthier, we are talking of the top most echelons right now, their reported income falls below the wealth. So their, it is lower than their wealth. So the richer you get, literally the lesser tax you're paying and there are many ways they are doing it, and the tax laws are not helping either. They underreport income, and our tax laws are also regressive enough that they let a lot of these people go away with it. My guess would be that they have a lot more CAs and teams sitting there to help reduce the tax burden of these rich people. That is one more thing. But it also makes another interesting observation, is that it's not a really bad thing that these super rich are actually paying less tax, because according to the report, when they do not pay less tax, they actually have more money in their company accounts, which can lead to investments, which can lead to higher employment, and in general it's great for the economy. I totally don't buy it, sir. I think it should everybody should report their income fairly. What do you think about it, sir? How much are our tax laws allowing this to happen?
Well, there are two ways of doing this. One is, and one has to differentiate between tax evasion and
Mhm.
tax avoidance.
Right.
I think the rich are brilliant in tax avoidance.
Mhm.
They have an army of chartered accountants who will
Right.
get the income from 10 different sources, and only one of them is taxable in India, the others will be taxable elsewhere. And if you play that game very carefully, you can actually avoid a tax and show a lower income than what your wealth is. I suspect the very rich do that because uh, they have lawyers, they have chartered accountants, and they have studied tax treaties very carefully, which you and I cannot study easily because you don't have the time and you don't have the money. But interesting, and yes, like it is in the world, rich always get away with not paying taxes, and the US has been trying to do that quite often, but offshore havens and what have you have always escaped the clutches of the US. Anyway, that takes us to the third story. And could we have uh, Anurag?
Good morning. On Monday, UNCTAD, which is an acronym for UN's Trade and Development Arm, has released a report that identifies 28 nations the US president singled out for a higher tariff rate than the 10% baseline, despite each accounting for less than 0.1% of the US trade deficit. The UNCTAD is calling on Donald Trump to exempt the world's poorest and smallest countries from reciprocal tariffs or risk serious economic harm to these countries. Many of the countries targeted with high tariff rates were unlikely to be a threat to the world's largest economy, given their small size and modest levels of exports. For instance, Malawi, facing 18% tariffs, bought just 27 million from the US exports. Mozambique, which faces 16% tariffs, got 150 million in exports. Cambodia, set for 49% tariff, made just 322 million last year in exports. The 150 million in vanilla imports in US from Madagascar, set to face 47% tariff, for which the main impact on the US was likely to be higher prices for consumers. Similarly, African countries like Ivory Coast and Ghana, from which imports cocoa worth 800 million and 200 million respectively, will affect the consumer prices, which leads to affecting these economies as well. Some of the countries hit 10% tariffs and due to face higher rates when the pause is over. The 90-day pause is over. Were previously beneficiary of the US policy called African Growth and Opportunity Act. The scheme had been in place since 2000 and gave sub-Saharan African countries tariff-free access to US markets to encourage economic development. As many as 32 countries were eligible before Trump's announcement appeared to tear up the scheme. The current 90-day pause offers an important opportunity to reassess how these countries are treated under the policy framework. This is a very crucial and critical moment to consider exempting such vulnerable economies and least developed countries, which are also known as LDCs, from tariffs that offer little to no advantage for US trade policy while potentially causing serious economic harm abroad. What's your take on this, sir?
Very, very true, Anurag. The UNCTAD is absolutely right in making this demand, a request, petition, whatever you call it. The US has a very, very lopsided formula for deciding which country pays what tariffs, and the poor countries have got hit very badly. So even the little exports that they can make, when you stop those exports, they'll be nowhere. And let us see what the US does. But already Trump is having a lot of flack. And like we mentioned yesterday, the bond market has shown that investors do not trust the US Treasury bill anymore. 20% went unsubscribed, and banks had to bail the US government out. So it's a crucial time for USA. Trump has blinked already with a 90-day pause, and the list of 20 items that have been given to the customs is likely to expand, and Trump's tariffs may change. And that takes us to the fourth story, and that by Isha. Isha, can we have you?
Hello, good morning. So the story I'm bringing you today is from the Hindu and it's titled Diamond Heir Mehul Choksi held in Belgium as India pushes for his extradition. So on Monday, the 14th of April, Belgian authorities confirmed that they have Mehul Choksi, the fugitive diamond businessman, in custody after he was arrested over the weekend. Mehul, along with his nephew Nirav Modi, are wanted in a case by Punjab National Bank alleging loan frauds worth more than 13,578 crores. The Central Bureau of Investigation, or CBI, has been pursuing his extradition since 2018 when he left the country. Mr. Choksi is an Antiguan citizen at present and had moved to Belgium a few years ago, reportedly for cancer treatment. He was arrested near his home in Antwerp. As per reports, he secured a Belgian citizenship permit in November 2023 as his wife is already a Belgian citizen. Mr. Choksi is currently appealing a decision by the Antiguan government to revoke his citizenship. His nephew, Mr. Nirav, has also been arrested in the UK on India's request and has been in prison since 2019 as he appeals his extradition to India. This is not the first time that Mr. Choksi has been arrested. In 2021, Choksi was arrested in Dominica. However, he was granted bail by the Dominican court on health grounds, after which he was returned to Antigua. Choksi's extradition to India might not really happen anytime soon, as the warrant must first be presented in Belgian courts and pass the dual criminality test. Uh, During this trial, especially since it is in Belgium and European human rights standards will apply, they will have to questions of human rights will have to arise in court, and usually India's poor judicial system and treatment of inmates is blamed. He is currently suffering from blood cancer and has also appealed for freedom on health grounds. So, while this is a good thing in terms of diplomacy and international relations of India with Belgium, the chances of him actually getting extradited into India are low to none, especially considering his health. But interesting story. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, sir. Thank you.
Well, it's an interesting story because the government has got one more person arrested after Nirav Modi. But the question is always the same. Can you get them extradited? Mehul Choksi is not an Indian citizen anymore. So what jurisdiction does India have over Mehul Choksi remains to be seen. It will be argued in the court. And let's see. Plus, the health grounds is always there. And he's already told the Belgian authorities that that the Indian government tried to kidnap him from Antigua in violation of all laws, and thereby he will try to show that India is not a safe place to find justice. Very interesting arguments we put up. Let's see what happens. But thank you, Isha. Great story. Interesting. And since we have already run a little out of time, I'll take up two questions. The first question is interesting. Why can't the government close the tax loopholes and collect money from the rich? I wish it were that easy. When you're rich, you have offshore companies. In offshore protected islands like the Channel Islands, which are bound by law not to reveal to the tax authorities any information. So even you submit papers, they will not give you information. Almost every major industrialist in India, and often even overseas, has companies in those areas, and incomes are filed in those companies, and they're exempted from India because they were not collected in India, no money transfer took place, all the export incomes went to those companies. It's possible to show lower incomes. Plus, many companies have other companies in other countries. The structuring of those companies is also complicated. It's not that simple. The rich have the benefit of knowledge. And that takes me to yet another question, which is equally interesting. What has India's success been when it comes to bringing back criminals? Terrible. Terrible. Partly because the unwillingness of the government to act in some cases. Take the classic case of Nityanand, who's been arrested by the Spanish authorities, but India is not trying to extradite him, even though he is accused of rapes, of land grab, and of embezzlement of funds, and even tried to create his own passport outside India, which is a big offense in India. There are lots of people that the government won't touch. And the few people the government tries to touch, like Neerav Modi or Mehul Choksi, are people who are smart enough to find the right lawyers and to adopt the right measures to escape the government's dragnet. Remember, Vijay Mallya lost his case almost a few years ago and still managed to go from one court to another, and now is trying to get asylum in the UK. And in India, won't find getting them out very easy. If it does, great, but do it for everybody, not just for a few people. That's unfair. Anyway, we have exceeded our time, and so I'd like to end today. But please post your questions. Even tomorrow, we'll try to take up more questions tomorrow. And in the meantime, do remember to click the subscribe button. Do remember to click the like button. And please tell your friends about us. See you tomorrow. Look forward to another exciting day of exciting news that we can talk about to you. Thank you for being with us. Good luck. Have a great day.